Hello everyone, my name is El Parnaso and in today's video I'm gonna show you the best Yami Fiensmith profile to play at locals. So don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and share the channel with your people so we can grow. Also, remember that we will have even more updates for the best Yami Fiensmith masterclass that already have over 5 hours of content with everything that I want to share when it comes to my knowledge of the Yami Fiensmith that I use to win Nats and almost go towards making top 8 at the Continental Championship. It's just $20 and will become 6, 7, and even 8 hours of content at the end of the updates that I'm planning with the deck. So give it a shot and let's begin with the discussion of how to build the deck, because I really think that you need to understand the environment that you are about to play in order to take the most advantage of the cards that you are choosing. In this case, locals is not the same as trying to go to the Continental Championship or trying to go to the National Championship, and it's not even the same as going to regionals. So let's talk about that for a moment so we can understand what we're going to do after that. It's always important to try to make this methodology of investigation, you may say, before you are throwing cards or taking out cards in any deck whatsoever. Okay? So the basic shit. Usually the locals that you're planning to go will have between 4 and maybe 5 rounds. Like, maybe you can let me know in the comments how your local works so I can have a better idea, right? Because at the end of the day, just like, I don't know, a squirrel is not the same in the Amazonas than the squirrels that live in, I don't know, Europe or some shit like that. Just like those squirrels are not going to be the same between them, just by the fact that they're living in different environments, the local culture is going to be different in each and every country. So I think it will be very worth it for you to discuss how your local works, so we can have all of these different perspectives in the comments, right? So just let me know. In the meantime, I will still be discussing this. So locals should have between 3, 4, or 5 rounds, depending of your environment, without any kind of top cut. So you need to value those rounds and what you are expecting in that specific environment. I'm going to try to make here a generic approach with what I understand from the culture. So let's say right now we are in an environment of Chaos Origins being the last set provided by Konami. So in a local culture, when people are just trying to chill, or just trying to have more of a fun time, or maybe just test whatever they were trying to build, I think that it's very important to make the interpretation that by this time, Kultun has been around for a very considerable number of months. Therefore, I think that not that many people will try to go and have that much fun with Kultun going to locals. Maybe that was the case before, but you need to ask yourself, why was that the case? And I think that is very assumable for us to think that a lot of people the people that were bringing Kultun to these locals of 3, 4, 5 rounds were people with the idea of testing that Kultun for the National Championship, for the Continental Championship. So I think that right now the local environment will be kind of different. People are just not trying to go because it's what they like to do. It's just something to have fun with. They enjoy Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is great, right? So because of this, I don't see that many people playing Kultun anymore. I just feel like this is the local approach that will happen, not only in my region, like it's happening, but a lot of different regions, right? Again, just let me know in the comment if your locals is still, 10,000 Kultuns in a 10,000-1 tournament, right? You never know, human culture is like that, diversifying everywhere at all times. I think it's beautiful, by the way. So because of this, I think that there are a lot of things that you need to approach in the deck building of Yami when it comes to local tournaments, right? Not thinking that much about Kultun will change everything. And even if you are facing Kultuns, I don't think that you are going to face Steven Trifanowski or Ruben Penaranda, Kamal Crooks, like Jesse Cotton, all that kind of people, right? Maybe you do. You can let me know that too, because that changes everything too, right? So even if you are playing, for example, even if you are playing 4 round locals when there is only one Kultung and literally only one, if that Kultung is Jesse Cotton, like obviously you need to consider that if you win your rounds, most likely you are eventually going to face Jesse Cotton. So if you are winning your rounds at that locals, it's inevitable for you to always in that local face a Kultung. Therefore, the logic changes, right? But now this is just a generic approach. You're going to your locals with your friends, with the people that usually go there by the end of the week, blah, 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 right? So that assumption is going to be very important here. The first, already, as you can see, I put a lot of the cards that shouldn't be that much of a discussion right now, at least. If you want deeper explanation of the choosing here in the main deck and the extra deck, everything is here, very, very detailed, like jamming about the standards, the non-engine, the side deck, blah, blah, blah. With the update that should be here with a section of August, with all the updates that I will be making, right? So, for example, the one of today, the update, the rest, the continuation of this explanation of building the deck for locals. So, putting all of these cards already on the deck, the next step, obviously, is the rest of the non-engine, right? So, we are still going to make a hand trap approach over a board breaker approach, even if we are expecting different decks than what we were building the deck for before, like my nationals, the Continental Championship, or I don't know, like the YCS that I made top 8, the other YCS that I made top 16. Like it's a different logic right now. So regardless of that different logic of deck building, we still prefer the hand traps over the board breakers. And if you want, again, deeper explanation, I explained the nature of Yami about that in this section. And the other different sections, right? The purpose of the deck, the template that you want, blah, blah, blah. So that is why we are going to put hand traps here. Sorry. Before doing the hand traps, something that I'm going to try to focus more, because this is locals post-Chaos Origins, but also post-Nationals and post-Continental Championship. I think that decks that you may see a lot now are the new decks, because people want to try the new cards, people want to have, some fun interacting with new logics of play Yu-Gi-Oh! So, and there's always the new toy syndrome, right? So I think that you're going to see a lot of Blitzkick. I think you're going to see Ritual of... Where are these guys? Oh, yeah, of course. It's because I should have put it here. Ritual, you are going to face this other Ritual deck. Ritual of Light and Darkness, shouldn't it be? Like, how is it called? Light and Darkness? The Dark and, yeah, this shit. The Light and Darkness shit. Like, yes, I know it was very popular before, during Nationals and the Continental, but I think now it's going to be even more popular. You also need to consider the fact that the Chaos Origins cards have dropped in price because there is no Nationals and Continental Championship anymore. So all of this shit is even more accessible than before. Therefore, with all of these things considered, I really believe that these 3 decks are the ones you're going to see the most. Let me know if this is not the case in the comments, remember. So here, these 2, the other deck that obviously you need to consider is the last one coming in Chaos Origins, which is the Invoke deck. Especially for locals, because I think that a lot of people play Yu-Gi-Oh! Because of the fusion logic, and in Alistair the Invoke being around the fusions, having all this logic from the anime that Konami did of like 20 minutes, blah, blah, blah. I think it's going to be a very popular choice, because it's a deck that people like. All the way back to 2015, I think, when the OG came out. So we're going to have all of this shit in mind, right? So because of all of that, Impermanence, I think, is going to still very useful. I know that it's excellent. Obviously, it's an excellent hand trap against the Invoke, especially at least in single one, when you don't have to put a specific shit against a specific decks. Impermanence obviously is also a staple because it's one of the little hand traps that can target. So It's one of the few hunters that can interact with the ritual monsters of the Light and Darkness. I know it's not ideal. You would rather have other hand traps, but it's still useful. So you can have these considerations, right? Against the Blitzkrieg deck, I think it's also very important for cards like, because that deck is a 2-card combination, and I know that you're going to tell me, but Parnaso, the field spell is putting a token on my field, so I'm fucked. Well, I tell you what Blitzkrieg don't do. They don't look at your hand, so they don't know if you have the imperm yet, right? And usually what they're going to do with that token is eventually pop it for cards like Surge, for example. So after that, you can still use the impermanence in the cards that you care about, which most likely will be the Crackle and the Surge. This is going to depend of what you're seeing that they are lacking of in the development of their engine, so you can take the most advantage of the impermanence. You can see deeper in my 2 sections of jamming against Blitzkrieg. So I think that imperm is still something high to consider, but it's not enough to consider the effect Veiler, for example, because impermanence is going to have also the benefit of making your purge more powerful, because now the purge have another trap in your deck that can give the destroy part like benefit, right? Which for Dominus Purge is excellent when it comes to considering the decks that you are facing. Again, I'm just gonna put it here below so I don't have to do all this shit. like we will say here, a cada rato. Like every fucking time. So let's put emblematic cards from those engines. So, and okay. So for example, Dominus Purge is excellent against all of these 3 because it prevents a lot of what you actually care about from that deck. One of the most important search of the Blitzkrieg is the field spell. If you have the benefit of having an imper in the graveyard, Dominus Purge being able not only to negate the man shuffle, but destroying it, forcing your opponent to build another one is important too. And obviously everything in Alistair deck searches, so avoiding one of those searches like is very important, right? So these like are basically staples right now. And why I'm using this explanation here, because maybe you will think, oh, this shit is obvious, blah, blah, blah. Why the fuck I'm listening to this? You always need to do this shit. It's very important because every tournament has its unique environment, its unique logic, and therefore your deck should be unique against that tournament. And just like every research that you make in order to make a paper, for example, like an academic paper, you can't assume anything. You need to prove all your shit. So here you need to prove to yourself that your choices have a reasoning behind it, okay? And that is why the next option is going to be kind of weird for you. It's going to be kind of weird because here we are just playing one Fuwa. One and only one. Why? Because yes, Fuwa is amazing against Alistair, but it's the shits against Ritual and Darkness. Like, yeah, you know, you're going to prevent all that firewall shit, but you are not preventing the development of the engine at the end of the day. Not only that, but most likely, whenever you throw the Fuwa against Light and Darkness, you're not going to draw shit because they are happy with the Mind Shuffle development like for one more turn, right? So they can actually wait. They can have the privilege of leaving a middle board because that middle board is still almost all their engine working. So, you know, Fuwa sucks. Obviously, Fuwa also sucks against the Blitzkrieg matchup because they all care about getting the trap card, getting the quick spell, and getting the monsters from the main deck circulation. So the Fuwa is also the shits, right? And even to that point, I know that some of you may be asking why then I am not putting the goddamn Fuwa in the side deck. Because I already explained further here in the guide, but you need to respect still the fact that your opponent can Fuwa your ass and, you know, lose the game. This is one of the biggest threats for Yami Fiensmith, and you need to respect that. When you identify weaknesses of a deck, it's not just to tell to yourself, oh, this deck sucks, fuck this deck, I'm going to try to look for other one. Whenever you identify the big issues that a deck can have, you need to ask to yourself if that big issue is going to have the consequence of this deck being unplayable because you don't have a big solution good enough to still go against that possibility of facing those big issues, right? For example, Fuwa against the Yami Fiensmith. So because we can still have the privilege of using the crossout as a good advantage, because of or because you still want kind of a joker to allow your other starters to resolve. If but being the crossout designator, being the best argument to play crossout to respect the Fuwa, and you need to build a deck to respect the Fuwa still, one copy of Mulcharmy Fuwalus will be still one of your hand traps in the deck. Again, you need to respect that shit. So obviously, just as a preview, the other two Mulcharmys are still in the side deck because you still can face a lot of differentiated locals, right? Also, something that you can add to the side deck, like if you want, depending of what you expect, is the Mulcharmy Purulia ones that are very good against Alistair decks and are really good against the Blitzkrieg too, right? Maybe not that good against Mind Shuffle. Some scenarios maybe because they need to still ritual summon from the hand, but you know, at that point you'd rather have another shit. So, but it's worth discussing the possibility of Purulia being a good seeds draw because they still summon from your hand too. And a lot of their hand traps are from the hand, like Fidrauglis Harmonia, right? So, like maybe there's an argument there, but you know, sit 7. So, you know, so this is when it comes to the Mulcharmys discussion. So we shall continue with the rest of the non-engine. Obviously, another thing that you will still use is the Ash Blossom. None of these three decks disrespect the Ash Blossom as a 1v1 interruption against them. So it's obviously worth the while to put it. And more importantly, is another way for you to negate the Mulcharmy Fuwalus. So you still play 3 of them, there's no discussion about it. But again, it's always worth the discussion because there has been times where top tier players have, for example, played just 2 Ash Blossoms. Or even worse, people not playing Ash Blossom at all. Just an example that's coming out of my head right now. Jesse Cotton during the pandemic at the YCSs that Konami were doing, like the Invitational, that weird shit. I think he made top 4 with Adamancipator, and the only hand traps that he was playing in the main deck, 3 Impermanents, 3 Nibiru's, no Ash Blossom whatsoever. So yes, Ash Blossom may be one of the biggest staples of all time, but you still ask that shit, okay? So the next thing will be the Ghost Bells. Because of what you are expecting and the diversify of how Bell works in the format right now, this card is kind of a second Ash Blossom, but worse, obviously, because you can negate any Mulcharmy with it. But is, I think, still worth to have the card when it comes to considering the decks right here. Against Blitzkrieg, the card sucks, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, that's a reality. The card is kind of bad. I mean, you can sometimes avoid... no, you can't even avoid the quick spells because they set themselves. They don't even add to the hand. So I can see how Bell is going to suck against Blitzkrieg, but Bell is really good against the Alistair deck, and it's not ideal against Mind Shuffle, but at least it's a hand trap that whenever Mind Shuffle is resolving, needs to have a counter from the opponent, another card from the opponent, to deal with you negating the ritual spell in the graveyard in order for them to make their actual ritual plays, which is not the same for Ghost Ogre, which is why we're playing just 2 of them. Again, obviously, Ogre is really great against Blitzkrieg, but it's not that good against the Alistair deck. And yes, you can Ogre the Mind Shuffle, but at the same time, you can Ogre the Mind Shuffle if they start with the Grifo, with the new Kuribo, right? Because the Kuribo sets it. And whenever they activate the Mind Shuffle from being set to face up, they can use directly the effect to add at that very point. So in that scenario, Mind Shuffle is not a spell trap that is already face up on the field activating its effect. It's a trap card activating. Therefore, you can Ogre it. Therefore, they will ritual summon their shit. Therefore, they will play the game. And therefore, if you are in a 1v1 with Ghost Ogre against Ritual and Darkness, they have more ways to just win that 1v1 than against the Ghost Bell. So I would rather have the 3 Ghost Bells that are also useful against Alistair than the Ghost Ogres in this idea, right? So the last 2 cards right here, because usually these 2 cards will be the Fuwalos, right? But because we are building now an idea of not drawing the Mulcharmies that much when we go second at single 1, we can have the Droll and Logbears in the main deck. Not only because of that, but we are not expecting Qultuns that much anymore. So Droll and Logbear is really a good hand trap against almost everything else that you are expecting. For example, just by making this review, Droll and Logbear is very good against almost all the starters of the Ritual and Darkness, except if they start with Grifo using it in the trophies, right? That's the exception. It's very good against the Alistair deck, obviously, even more than before, because now because the new cards that they were given are more searchers. So, you know. And obviously it's good is good still against the Blitzkick, because they don't have that many ways to add during the draw phase or any way whatsoever. They don't have a way to put face up that... Oh no, yeah, they have. Yeah, they have a way with the quick spell. Yeah, that's true. But it's the same against the Mind Shuffle deck, right? So because of how Droll can work and help you against these new decks as a decent hand trap against these 2, and as a very good hand trap against the Alistair, and because of you not having that many Mulcharmies in your main deck, and the local environment when you can face whatever the fuck people are bringing, like, I don't know, like that guy bringing Fire King ever since 2022 or some shit like that, you know? So I think Droll is a very good choice here. And I think that you need to and I know that it sounds weird to trying to explain and justify decisions like Ash Blossom or Dominus Purge, but with you asking yourself these questions, you can have a better ratio of the cards that you are putting in your deck with the purpose that you want them to be in that deck. Like, for example, by making this exercise, we can conclude that we are playing just 1 Mulcharmy Fuwalos. And just by seeing this, I know that you can make yourself the question of why I am playing the triple tactical talents still, right? You can make the argument that if you are not expecting that many Qultuns, you can take away this card, especially when you are expecting decks like Ritual and Darkness that, you know, can have the privilege of using other shit before they have a monster trigger, or even when they use the monster trigger, you already lost something that you can replace. And plus the ritual monsters are unaffected by talents, so you can never take them. I know that you can make the argument, but then you need to make the counter argument. If I am taking the triple tactical talents, what I am putting in its place that will be better? You can make the argument for a third Ghost Ogre, but by that point, you are facing a Grifo that is activating in draw phase, or an Alistair, and you draw 2 Ogres, or some shit like that, right? Like, you need to contemplate that scenario, and maybe, for your specific environment, maybe it's worth it. Maybe there is an extra hand trap, an extra copy of a hand trap that you can put here, so you can send these talents to the side deck, right? But again, you need to make that exercise. You need to make this logic. Again, as I said before, paraphrasing something that I said before, you need to do methodology of investigation. You need to make this frame. You need to take yourself the time to think about these decisions. Okay? It's very important, because at the end of the day, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is an intellectual game that is based off the cognitive development of you building and playing the deck. Okay? So if you enjoy it, leave a like, subscribe, and share the channel with your people. Don't forget to let me know how your local environment works, so I can have a better idea, and we can share experience between all of them. Because, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is human culture. Human culture is diversified at all times, and I think that's beautiful. Bye-bye.